late, huh?
Yeah, we are ready, set to go. Dr.
Okay.
Neeta madam is also there, HOD DY.
Hi, Hema.
Hi, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fine.
Dr.
We are waiting for your expert comments, huh?
No.
Dr. Sumita ma'am is the internal examiner.
Okay.
Hello, madam.
Hi.
Good evening, ma'am. So,
Hi, Sumit.
we will start today's session. It is season 3 BOA PG lectures, and we have started with the virtual vivas. Today, we have a team DY Patil with us, and internal examiner is Dr. Sumita ma'am, and external examiner is Dr. Himalini ma'am. Ma'am, with your permission, can I start sharing the screen? First case
Yes.
is Dr. Sandeep, it's on Squint.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Dr. Sandeep, can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see the screen.
Okay, go ahead.
So on history, it's a 9-year-old female child brought by the parents with complaints of deviation of right eye since 1 year, along with heaviness and strain in the right eye. There is history of spectacle use since 3 years. History of patching of left eye daily for 2 hours since 6 months has been advised by the doctor. There's no history of ocular surgery in the past. No history of ocular trauma. No history of any systemic illnesses such as diabetes or any other neurological disease. It was a full-term normal delivery with a normal birth weight. No history of systemic illnesses. There's no significant family history, and there's no significant personal history. On general examination, the patient is well built and nourished. The pulse is 78 per minute, regular in rhythm and volume. The blood pressure was 130/80. The CVS, RS, and CNS were within normal limits. The right eye has an uncorrected visual acuity of 6/60, the left eye being 6/6, plano. The right eye best corrected visual acuity is 6/12 with a +2 sphere and a +1 cylinder at 120 degrees. The lid and the adnexa appear normal in both the eyes. The conjunctiva and the cornea are normal as well. The anterior chamber is normal in depth. Iris normal in color and pattern in both the eyes. Pupil is round, regular, reacting in both the eyes. The lens is clear in both the eyes. And the EOMs are free and full in both the eyes. The head posture is normal. The ocular posture in primary position, there is exotropia in the right eye and the left eye is normal. The uniocular extraocular movements are normal, free, full, and painless in all gazes with no nystagmus. Binocular extraocular movements in the right eye has concomitant divergent squint, and left eye is normal, full, and conjugated in all gazes.
Can you see the next line?
Yeah, I can see.
So it's the Hirschberg test is 30 degrees of deviation in the right eye, no deviation in the left eye. On cover-uncover test, it reveals a concomitant divergent squint in all gazes in the right eye and left eye, no deviation. Fixation in the right eye is central, steady, and well maintained. Left eye is central. In this, the certain sets of the sensory evaluation are not done. I would just like to ask one thing: is the exotropia intermittent or constant? Like
It's intermittent.
It's intermittent. So, my diagnosis is that it's a case of right eye intermittent exotropia along with hyperopia. Along with hyperopia, along with mild amblyopia, since she's not reaching a 6/6 visual acuity even after correction. Along with mild amblyopia, to be specific.
Okay.
With left eye dominance as well, because on cover-uncover test, so with left eye dominance, yeah.
Okay. Sumit, should I start asking the questions?
Yes, ma'am. You can go ahead.
Okay. Doctor, you mentioned that there was no history of diabetes, and this is a 9-year-old girl who was presented, like you said, her diagnosis was an intermittent divergent squint.
Right.
Do you think the history of diabetes is relevant in this case?
In a 9-year-old child, not so much, but yeah, like basically diabetes can give rise to various peripheral neuropathies, and that basically ruling out history of diabetes rules out any paralytic component.
Okay, so here in this patient, if you get a 9-year-old child in your exam, don't mention diabetes.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
Because diabetes is not relevant for a 9-year-old.
Not
Okay.
for a 9-year-old. Yeah.
Then second is, why is the birth history important in any strabismus case, particularly in this case? Why is it important?
So basically, in case there is a history of an unstable clinical course at birth, suppose there is a history of, say, for example, a forceps delivery or a vacuum extraction delivery, not a normal delivery, that can give us a clue of maybe an associated trauma which could have occurred, which could have led to this particular condition, or neurological damage could have led to a paralytic component of
But this is not a paralytic squint. You said your diagnosis was an intermittent divergent. So in this particular case, why would you ask for birth history? Is it important? Is it relevant in any way?
In low birth weight babies, there is chance of development of
correct. So in today's times, would you say, would you ask particularly for history of, conceiving the baby IVF or normally or anything? Or is there any relation between IVF babies and occurrence of strabismus or amblyopia or anything?
The incidence of strabismus can go up in IVF babies.
Correct. So that is the reason why birth history is important, and all children with strabismus, you should ask for birth history. Another thing that has not been mentioned in the history, I know you've not taken the history, but like how you mentioned that sensory tests were not mentioned. So similarly, family history has not been mentioned in this case. So is family history important and relevant to our case?
It's important for amblyopia.
It's important for strabismus also, right? Because if the father has strabismus or the mother has strabismus, there's a good chance that the child will also get strabismus, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, that the extraocular movements were free and full and something. No? What did you say? Free, full, and painless.
Yes, ma'am.
In exotropia, what is the common pattern that you see?
Ma'am, a V pattern is commonly found.
The V pattern is because of which muscle overaction usually?
Ma'am, the V pattern is generally because of
which muscle overaction?
LR overaction.
LR overaction will not give rise to a V pattern. So V pattern, what do you understand by a V exo?
It's due to a MR overaction, ma'am, in the lower case.
So listen to the question again. What do you understand by a V exo? When I say there is a V exotropia, what do you understand by that term?
It indicates that the exotropia in upgaze is more than the exotropia in downgaze.
Very good, very good. Yeah. So do you know of any particular muscle which overacts and can give?
Inferior oblique, ma'am.
Inferior oblique, that's right. Can you name 2 intorters of the eye?
Intorters of the eye.
Yeah.
So in both the superiors are intorters. So superior rectus superior rectus and superior oblique are intorters. Both the superiors are.
Very good. Can you name 2 extorters of the eye?
Both the inferiors. So inferior rectus and inferior oblique are extorters of the eye.
Very good. Suppose if I were to ask you that, examine or demonstrate how would you test for right inferior oblique overaction in this particular patient? Can you just show me how you would ask the patient to check for inferior oblique overaction?
Obliques are always tested in adduction.
Correct.
So I'm testing an inferior oblique. Inferior oblique is elevation. So I adduct the eye and check for elevation.
Very good. Very good. What about the left inferior rectus? If I were to ask you to left inferior rectus demonstrate, what would you do?
Recti, the vertical recti are always tested in abduction. So I'll tell the patient to abduct and ask for depression movement.
Correct. What is the action of inferior rectus muscle? There are 3 actions. Name me the primary, secondary, and tertiary.
The primary action is depression. The secondary action is of abduction.
Abduction, nahi.
Adduction. And the tertiary action is of extortion.
Okay, good. Can you tell me the nerve supply of the superior oblique muscle?
The superior oblique is 4th trochlear nerve, SO4.
Okay.
And Yeah.
Okay.
Latin rectus is 6 now.
Okay. There are two important laws in strabismus. One is the Sherrington's law and the other is?
Herring's law. The
Can you give
Sherrington's
me?
law is so the Herring's law is about equal motor stimulation to the yoke muscles, and the Sherrington's law is of reciprocal inhibition of the ipsilateral antagonists.
Correct. So can you give me right superior rectus ka yoke muscle? Which is the yoke muscle for right superior rectus?
Right superior rectus yoke muscle will be left superior.
You want to try
Left
again?
inferior oblique. Left inferior oblique. Yeah.
Very good. And right inferior rectus?
Right inferior rectus will be left superior oblique.
Fantastic. Very nice. Okay. Can you give me an exception to the Sherrington's law? What is the Sherrington's law?
Convergence.
No. Sherrington's law. What is Sherrington's law?
A reciprocal inhibition of the ipsilateral antagonist.
Inhibition or overaction? What is Sherrington's law? When the agonist is contracting,
the antagonist will not contract.
Yeah, will relax. Okay.
Relax.
You're correct. So what is the exception to the Sherrington's? There is one particular condition in strabismus, very commonly seen in the OPD, where you have the medial rectus and the lateral rectus muscles co-contracting. Duane's, correct. And similarly, which is an exception to the Herring's law? If one eye goes up, the other should come down, right? But there is a condition where one eye deviates up, but simultaneously the other eye does not come down. What is that condition called? Starts with a D, ends with a D.
Vertical deviation.
Very good, very good. So that's great. Now you mentioned about some sensory tests which were not mentioned in this case. So which sensory tests you know?
So to begin with, I like to do a Wurz-Fodor test to check for a diplopia component, also to check for any suppression if there's a right eye.
Now you mentioned diplopia. Do you expect this child to have diplopia?
No, ma'am. In this child, I'll most likely have a suppression of the right eye. Sorry, yeah, because there's mild eye.
Correct. So you be careful when you speak, no? Because see, if you mention diplopia, now in this patient, you're already saying he's amblyopic.
Yes, ma'am.
There is no question of diplopia here, okay? Now, suppose if I tell you that in a Wurz-Fodor test, your interpretation is that the child is seeing 5 dots, okay?
Right.
5 dots. That means she's giving a diplopia response.
Right.
And there is no squint.
Right.
There is no visible squint. What is your interpretation of that?
Ma'am, so
not 5, sorry. 4. 4 means she's giving a fusion response.
That's normal, ma'am. That's a normal response.
That's a normal response. And if she's saying 5 and no squint, though?
Ma'am, in that case, it's like there's no clear-cut dominance established yet, so it's alternating. So that's why.
There is no such response only there. 5 lights and no squint, there is no response only. Okay. And if the child is seeing 4 lights, if all the 4 lights are seen in presence of a small squint, that means then what is the response? That means there is a squint and she's seeing 4
abnormal
lights.
retinal correspondence.
Yeah, abnormal retinal correspondence. Okay. Any other sensory tests that you're aware of? What are the stages of binocular vision?
Ma'am, so there's simultaneous perception, fusion, and stereopsis. In simultaneous perception, it's these are the 3 stages.
So when I'm asking you a question, when the examiner asks you a question, you stick to one-line answers only. The more you talk, then you will get dragged into something different. Okay. Stereopsis, the common tests. Can you name some tests for me?
Ma'am, so there's a TNO test. There's a Lang random dot test. Then there's a
Lang random dot test are not the same.
Sorry, ma'am.
There's
a random dot, the TNO test, random dot test, Lang test, and the Titmus fly test are the commonly used.
So can you describe the Lang's test to me?
And
what is the advantage that Lang's has over the others, and what is the disadvantage that Lang's has?
Ma'am, Lang's has 4 squares in which the shape. No, that's not Lang's. Lang's is
in the picture is given in Kansky, the picture.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, Lang's is basically useful for children. It is a single card, 40 centimeters,
Yes.
read at 40 centimeters, and its main
Yes.
advantage is it's at children. The disadvantage is the range of this is very less, and all the three readings on Lang test are indicate a low stereoacuity.
No. Oh no. You want to try again? What is the Langs? I've asked you to describe. Do you remember the picture of the Langs card? How does the Langs card
Yes,
look?
ma'am.
What are the objects on it?
Ma'am, the sun, the star, moon,
yes.
car, and four things are there, ma'am. Four things are there. 200, 200, 400, 600.
What is the advantage that Langs has over other cards? That you don't need?
You don't need any Polaroid or red green or anything.
Yeah, because it has an inbuilt thing. So you don't need that, right? But the disadvantage is that it can test stereopsis up to how much? How many
600.
seconds of arc?
200.
200 seconds of arc. Okay. Now, if I tell you,
200.
if I give you two examples, that one child has a stereopsis of 200 seconds of arc and the other child has a stereopsis of 20 seconds of arc, which child has better stereopsis?
20. Lower the better.
Lower the better. Very good. What is the practical importance of stereopsis? Suppose somebody asks me, so what's the big deal? Depth perception. Give me one example where depth perception is important in one particular profession.
Cataract surgery. Okay, needling a thread, tailor.
Correct. Cataract surgery also you need depth perception. No?
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, okay, and even pilots they require depth perception, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Last 5 minutes to go.
Okay.
For this case.
Now, how do you plan to treat this patient now?
Ma'am, so this patient, I'd like to evaluate if it's a divergence excess or a convergence insufficiency. So one, I'd like to check for that. And this patient also has an amblyopia, so we'll have to continue the amblyopia therapy of occlusion. She's already 9 years, and so most, ma'am, the defect is 30 degrees on Hirschberg's, which comes to 60 prism diopters, which is too much. So since she has amblyopia, I would prefer a one eye recession surgery.
So you want to go straight away for surgery right now?
No, ma'am. To begin with, I'll give her a pencil push-ups and home orthoptic training exercises.
30 degrees is not going to respond to your pencil push-up.
Yes,
30 degrees, you're saying, no, it's a large squint. 30
yes,
degrees, 60, how will it respond?
Ma'am, we can give prisms for palliation.
Prisms won't work with such a large deviation.
Ma'am, we will evaluate the Newcastle score, and based on that, we can decide if to go for early surgery or to delay the surgery.
So you have to give the option to the parents. Now, 9 years old means she's already beyond the age where patching will work, right? So and she's already been patching.
Yes, ma'am.
She's already. So you have to give the option. I would like to give the option to the parents whether they would prefer an early surgery or whether they would want to wait. Is there any harm if they wait for surgery?
At this stage, not really, ma'am. At this age.
Later on also, does it matter?
Ma'am, so
I mean, go ahead.
Like as per Jampolsky, he preferred a late surgery, whereas Knapp advised the earlier surgery.
No, the indication of this surgery. What is the reason for indication for this surgery?
A high degree exo is an indication.
So basically, it's a cosmetic indication, right? She's already 9 years of age. It's a cosmetic indication. She's wearing her glasses. So any cosmetic squint surgeries can wait.
Ma'am, but recent trend says that even after 9 years, there is role of improvement up to 13 to 14 years.
What I would have wanted you to say is that it's an intermittent divergence squint. So she does have some amount of binocular vision. Okay, because
So we can try and increase her fusional reserve and
by operating. So you should have mentioned that, yes, I would like to operate this patient because it's an intermittent divergence squint.
Okay.
Patient has some fusion remaining. So to maintain that fusion, it's a good idea to offer the option to the parents. Okay, and what is the surgery you would like to do for this patient?
Ma'am, in the squinting in the right eye, both medial and lateral rectus, along with a lateral rectus in the left eye, because 60 prism diopters won't be.
Which one? Resect what?
Ma'am, a medial rectus resection and a lateral rectus recession, ma'am.
Lateral rectus recession.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and how much maximum can you do lateral rectus recession?
Ma'am, 8.
8 millimeters is the maximum you can do. Okay, and what is the origin of the lateral rectus muscle?
Ma'am, it's from the 10
What is
10
that thing called? What is
circular
that
annulus of Zinn.
annulus of Zinn? And what is that imaginary line called where they all insert the muscles?
Spiral of
The-
Taylor's.
Correct. Good. Very good. So am I done, Swapnish?
Yes. If the
Okay.
internal has some questions.
No, I think
Okay.
already Sandeep has answered most of the questions.
No, good candidate, madam. Very good training.
Yeah,
It was like a rapid fire round.
nicely Sandeep has answered. I think we'll move with the second case, I think.
Okay. We'll share the screen again, sir. Dr. Rohan, ready?
Yeah.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So 56-year-old male, resident in Mumbai, shopkeeper by occupation, came to the OPD with chief complaints of diminution of vision in the right eye since 1 year and left eye since 6 months. Patient was apparently all right 1 year back when he developed gradual, painless, progressive diminution of vision in the right eye associated with heaviness of eyes and frequent change of glasses. Patient developed similar complaints in the left eye later on. No history of colored halos, no history of night blindness, no history of trauma to the eye, no history of watering. Past history, patient is known case of diabetes mellitus for last 5 years and on oral hypoglycemic treatment. Known case of asthma on inhalational therapy whenever symptomatic. Known case of myopia using glasses. Personal history, smoker for the last 30 years, smokes 2 to 3 cigarettes per day. Family history not significant. General examination well built and nourished, pulse 78 beats per minute, regular in rhythm and volume, blood pressure 130 by 80 millimeters of mercury, cardiovascular, respiratory, and central nervous system within normal limits. On examination, the uncorrected visual acuity in the right eye was 624, best corrected was 612, with a -3 diopter sphere and a 1 diopter cylinder at 120 degrees. Lids and adnexia appear normal. Conjunctiva was normal. Cornea is clear. Anterior chamber shows normal depth. Iris normal in color and pattern. Pupils 5 millimeters, round, sluggish, reacting to light, grade 3 RAPD. Lens, nuclear sclerosis, grade 2. Extraocular muscle movements were free and full. Left eye, uncorrected visual acuity, 618. 6.9 improving with a -2 diopter sphere. Lids are normal, conjunctiva normal, cornea clear, anterior chamber depth normal, iris appears normal, and pupil was normal in size, shape, reacting to light. Lens, nuclear sclerosis grade 2 and extraocular movements free and full.
You need to describe the findings.
Yes. So I'll start with the right eye. This is a fundus photo of the right eye showing optically clear media. The disc appears, the cup disc ratio appears to be 0.9 to almost total, near total cupping. There seems to be nasalization of the vessels. There is, I can appreciate the bayoneting sign. There is barring seen along the inferior temporal region. There's notching and overpass cupping, and yes, ma'am, the neuroretinal rim is completely thinned out, and moving to the left eye, the vertical cup disc ratio appears to be 0.6 and the horizontal appears to be 0.5 to 0.6. There's nasalization and bayoneting seen here as well. There's barring of vessels, overpass cupping. It's not following the ISNT rule. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On gonioscopy, the right eye and the left eye both had open angles. The intraocular pressure recorded in the right eye was 28 millimeters of mercury and the left eye was 26. Diagnosis. So this appears to be a case of primary open angle glaucoma, bilateral primary open angle glaucoma with right eye more than the left eye, right eye showing near total cupping. So a very advanced stage of open angle glaucoma with glaucomatous optic atrophy in the right eye, and the left eye appears to be a moderate stage of open angle glaucoma.
Ma'am, is it done with the presentation? Sumita ma'am.
Okay, Acha. The external would like to ask question over this first, or should I ask?
No, ma'am, you go ahead.
Okay. Rohan, so why there is frequent change in classes associated with glaucoma?
Ma'am, so in glaucoma, there is the change in the, basically what happens is the refractive index of the lens.
Yeah,
They seem to have.
Yeah, the raised intraocular pressure starts affecting the accommodation part of the lens.
The accommodation, yes, ma'am. So basically the near vision is what we need to keep documenting.
Any other complaint patient can say? Normally with POAGs, there are hardly any complaints. Apart from this, if you go back and evaluate, any other complaint is associated with POAG?
With open angle glaucoma, ma'am, so family history is a very common, there could be scotomas that the patient will come primarily with complaining of. There could be eye pain. There could be headaches associated. There could be...
Headaches are not so much with...
not so much with open angle, more with angle closure, but yes, ma'am.
So
and
history, then what is the kind of inheritance with POAG?
Ma'am, so myosin, the genes associated are myosin and myoc, and the other one was optineurin. So these genes are associated with genetic predisposition in glaucoma cases.
What are the other systemic associations or other ocular associations of POAG?
It's seen in cases like, for example, in this patient, he seems to have diabetes mellitus, which is a systemic associated factor. That is systemic hypertension, nocturnal hypotension. There could be association with...
There is a POAG and NTG, both entity. Ideally, you should be separating them out. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. So
there are some factors more associated with NTG.
NTG, right.
Nocturnal hypotension is more so with?
More with NTG. And likewise, obstructive sleep apnea.
Try to separate out POAG and NTG. Give it that way. Give those calls.
So for POAG, the central corneal thickness, starting from it's more the central corneal thickness, more is the risk. The race, less the central corneal thickness, we'll we'll be underestimating the intraocular pressure. Then the race, so POAG is more associated with African American Black population, whereas normal tension glaucoma is more for the Asian population, a Japanese population to be more specific. The NTG, as you said, ma'am, systemic hypertension, obstructive sleep apnea is more common with NTG, and vasospastic episodes are common to both. So you could have Raynaud's phenomenon, which could affect both POAG and NTG. And apart from that, ma'am, there's conditions that alter the translaminar gradient. So that could cause, for example, if there's raised intracranial tension, the translaminar gradient, which is the difference between the intraocular pressure and the
Rohan,
intracranial
what
pressure.
other tests will you do in this patient?
Other tests. So, ma'am, this patient, I would like to, because the right eye is so involved, would like to go ahead and do a perimetry, 10-2 to be more specific, and for the right eye. And
See, first, before that,
ma'am, the pressures, the intraocular pressure has already been documented, ma'am. We do
actually, you have said POAG, but till now gonioscopy has not been done.
no, ma'am, gonioscopy, it said the angles were open and normal.
Oh.
So I would go ahead and maybe we could do a DVT to see how much fluctuation is there if we're planning for a target, so we know the upper limit. But apart from that, ma'am, the OCT would be rendered futile because it's such an advanced case, at least in the right eye, so the floor phenomena. So I would directly go ahead and do a perimetry in this case. And maybe I'll also do a pachymetry again to confirm if the 28 millimeters that we've recorded is is undervalued or it's accurate. And
Which is the change in intraocular pressure for the thickness of the cornea? What is the ratio?
ma'am, so for every 10 millimeters of 10 microns, there is 7.7 millimeters of mercury that varies.
You sure?
Yes, ma'am.
How will you manage this patient?
Ma'am, so for the right eye, ma'am, based on the results we get on the 10-2 perimetry, if his central fixation point is the surrounding areas are normal and there is no sign suggestive of a macular split, then we would aim for a target IOP in the low teens.
To expect a macular split, there is any sign over there which tells you there could be a macular split?
Ma'am, in this case, it's the likeliness of a macular split is very high because of the amount of cupping that is noted.
Apart from the cupping, any other finding which you already mentioned?
Ma'am, the fact that there is RAPD.
There is an RAPD, so obviously you are expecting, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you cannot on a 10-2 elicit a response, what is the next test that you will do?
Ma'am, we do the macular fields where we increase the size of the stimulus to 5, the macular program. And yes, ma'am, it's the size will be...
By a macular split.
Sorry, ma'am?
What do you understand by a macular split?
Ma'am, macular split is when any 2 points adjacent to the central fixation have a value of 0 decibels with a p-value of less than 5%. So...
Okay, Sumita, please ask.
Okay, so your first treatment would be, you said?
Ma'am, so for the right eye, if there is no macular split, then, but as we saw that there is RAPD and severe glaucomatous optic atrophy almost. So topically manage this patient because we can't really bring in a surgical intervention for now, control the pressures medically and bring it, try to aim for the low teens. And for the right eye, ma'am.
So for low teens, then how many drops you will start with?
Ma'am, so we'll start with a combination first. I'll give him a combination of maybe brimonidine, brinzolamide, both being neuroprotective would help this patient additional to the drop in IOP. And and then we document...
Protection, it's not an NTG, no? We are not aiming at NTG. Why not prostaglandin analog?
Yes, ma'am. Like we could go for a prostaglandin analog. I was
The
thinking
drop in intraocular pressure, With prostaglandins, with brimonidine, and with brinzolamide.
Sorry. Prostaglandins have maximum IOP lowering, so they are in the range of 30 to 35%, whereas brinzolamide, being an alpha agonist, is in the range of 20 to 25%, and brimonidine, sorry, and brinzolamide, being a carbonic anhydrase, is in the range of 17 to 18%.
Would you prefer to give 1 drop to get your 35%, or would you prefer to give 2 drops?
Ma'am, ideally, I would prefer 1 drop if it's possible to bring down the IOP with a prostaglandin. Then definitely go with 1. Avoid polypharmacy, but if
you will give a prostaglandin first.
Yes, ma'am.
Sumita, please continue.
Okay, so now if the patient, do you think only medically how much you will pull this patient?
Sorry, ma'am.
Medically, is medical the only choice we have? Even if there is a macular split?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we advise the patient surgery?
Ma'am, so if there is a macular split, ideally we'd avoid because of the fear of a snuff out phenomenon. But if the patient insists, or there is also non-invasive glaucoma procedures like deep sclerectomy and viscocanalostomy. So these are not routinely practiced.
What I'm asking is, what are the indications for a surgery, even in this situation? Okay,
for
trabeculectomy. Even if you started the medication, now when will you think of intervening again? You started with medication, try to control it. Now, what will be your, how will you follow up this patient later on? What will you see? And what will you do next? To start with.
Ma'am, so if there is if there is the IOP control with medical management isn't adequate. So with maximum medical management also, if we are not able to achieve our target IOP, then we consider surgery. If there is progression despite IOP control, then we can consider surgery. If there is, if the patient himself expresses a strong desire to be free of putting drops on a chronic basis, then under guarded visual prognosis, we can go ahead with surgery, but that would be still not advisable. And
the non-compliant patients.
Non-compliant patients, yes, ma'am.
What is the role of laser trabeculoplasty in POAG?
Ma'am, POAG, it has a good effect. So the IOP lowering action of laser trabeculoplasty is equivalent to 20 to 25% of IOP lowering. So that has a good role to play here. So we could, if the patient wants to be free of drops, we could go ahead and do that. Or in adjuvant, as an adjuvant therapy, we can add that to the medical management.
What are the problems? What are the disadvantages of SLT?
Ma'am, so with selective laser, there could be an IOP spike immediately after, like there's a one post SLT, after 1 hour, there's an IOP spike of up to 40 to 50 millimeters of mercury. And that in a patient like this could be having detrimental effects in that it could irreversibly damage whatever little.
Medication do we give for that so that spike is not there?
To prevent, ma'am, so eye drop aproclonidine is commonly administered, or we could give brimonidine so as to curb the spike that is encountered. And in addition to that, there is the other problems that we may face are pigment dispersion. There could be, yes, ma'am, a lot of inflammation associated with this procedure. And if
immediate problems of SLT, okay, what are the long term? Anything long term? How long the effect lasts of SLT? Is it a permanent procedure?
No, ma'am. It's the effect is up to 3 to 6 months, or 2 to 6 months, and then it needs to be repeated after documenting the intraocular pressure.
And last minute for this case.
What is the indication of SLT in general? Which patient would you do SLT?
Ma'am, in cases of open angle, PXF, and pigment dispersion, these three cases,
The drops are dangerous. The surgery is dangerous. So which condition is that?
ma'am, so advanced cases where we, yeah, as we said, as where surgery is contraindicated and drops are not efficacious.
No, the drops are not advised. The drops are detrimental to the general health of the patient, and the surgery is not advocated. There is one condition where an
In case of pregnancy, ma'am.
Yeah, that's it. So the last minute is answered.
Sumita ma'am, one last question. You want to ask a last question? We can accommodate that.
Okay, what is the role of OCT in glaucoma?
Ma'am, OCT, so to check the RNFL, like the RNFL was the main thing, but in cases of pre-perimetric glaucoma cases where the perimetric findings have still not been caught, we can go ahead and do an OCT and see if there's any RNFL thinning, or even GCC is now being used for early stage glaucomatous changes to be identified.
It is more of an objective than a subjective one, isn't it? So it is more reliable.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
And what is progression in the green zone in an OCT? Progression
in green zone is basically when the patient appears to have normal thickness. So it's compared to the normal population, and so there's a database from where you have a green zone. But within the green zone itself, if there's a decline noted, then we can catch that. So despite RNFL thinning, sometimes if the patient is in green, it may be missed, but that decline noted in the OCT can help us catch that.
Yeah, you can observe the patient more closely, or you can even start him on a small drop.
Yes, ma'am.
Especially if the patient has family history, this becomes a very important point to start the patient on treatment.
Yes.
Done, Swapnesh? 1 minute done?
Yes. Sumit, OSCE is ready?
Yes. Kshitij and Jay, we need to unmute, sir.
Yeah. You just announce the chronology. How will they?
Okay, fine. It will go like Kshitij, Jay, Rohan, Sandeep. Kshitij, Jay, Rohan, Sandeep.
Okay. So Hema madam and Sumita madam, the marks will be given only if the candidate who is in turn will answer. Obviously, if we cannot, it will pass on. Any other person can answer, but the team will not get the marks for that.
Okay.
Consolation mark if teacher answers.
Okay. So Kshitij, ready? Yeah. Time of answer is 2 minutes only. Okay. So thank you to all of them for helping us making this OSCE, and they are the big contributors to this session. So we'll start. A 40-year-old lady comes in with the 3-day history of eye discomfort. Please diagnose. Kshitij.
I think he's not unmuted.
Swapnesh sir? Kshitij, can you hear us?
Somebody said screen not shared.
Can you see the screen, ma'am? Sumita ma'am?
Yeah, I can
see.
Even I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, so that means it is there. They must be having some internet issue who are not able to see.
Sandeep, you can see?
Yes, ma'am.
Kshitij, your time, 1 minute is already over. Can you please diagnose this lesion?
No, he's not on this thing. He cannot hear you.
Kshitij
Tamboli, he's not muted.
He's unmuted. Kshitij, can you talk, please? We are not able to. I think he's not connected.
Mm.
Okay, we'll pass it on to Jay. Jay is there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jay, can you please answer? Kshitij, you do one thing. Please leave the meeting and join back again with the audio. Jay, you're there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please answer the question, please.
So this is a herpetic dendritic ulcer, with staining base with fluorescein and with terminal knobs.
How do you manage the patient?
So we'll give eye ointment acyclovir 5%, 3 times a day for 2 weeks, and we'll give atropine eye ointment 1%. Then, if needed, and if not resolved, we can start with systemic acyclovir.
Okay, what is the benefit of systemic acyclovir in the dendritic keratitis?
So it won't progress to geographical or any stromal ulcer. Sir.
No, that's the wrong.
Primarily give it, but
Also, the long-term, like the prolapse will be prevented with.
So yeah, the recurrence can be prevented. It has no role in the treatment. Ma'am, he answered correctly. Only thing he said acyclovir 5%. In the eye ointment, we use it 3%. 5% is for the skin lesions.
oh, he said it 5% 3 times instead of 3% 5 times.
Yeah. So can we give him full marks, ma'am?
I think
Uma
so.
madam.
Yeah, give.
Okay. Next, Kshitij has not logged in, I suppose. Kshitij,
I have logged in, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Kshitij, next question is for you.
Yes, sir.
A 50-year-old man comes with the fleshy growth that has been on the left eye for past few years, diagnosed as having a nasal pterygium. If you operate and it reoccurs, what is the management for the recurrence post-surgery?
So management for recurrence is conjunctival pterygium surgery with extended conjunctival transplant.
Okay, would you like to use any medication along with?
Mitomycin can be used, sir, 0.2%.
Okay, and second question is, what is full form of perfect surgery?
Sir, that is pterygium excision.
Anyone else want to attempt? Rohan?
So it's pterygium
Extended removal by
with conjunctival transplantation. Extended conjunctival transplantation.
At one time. Ankit, you want to finish the answer? Ankit?
Sandeep.
It's pterygium extended removal followed by extended conjunctival transplant.
Perfect. So that is the correct answer. So they answered one, ma'am, and they could not answer the second, like the person has. So 5 marks, fine, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Next will be Rohan again. Rohan, you are ready?
Yeah.
This goes for you. A 19-year-old male on the routine examination complains of dryness and foreign body sensation in both eyes. On examination, we see this lesion. What is this lesion?
Appears to be Bitot spots, sir.
Okay. Commonly seen in which condition?
In vitamin A deficiency, xerophthalmia.
Okay. And dose of vitamin A to treat a keratomalacia?
Dose is so on if it's given in oil base, then it's 2 lakh international units, whereas if it's in aqueous, then it's 1 lakh international units on day 0, 1 and 28.
So how do we give it the this lipid suspension? Mode of giving it to the patient?
It's intramuscular.
No, it's oral. When you give
Oral.
2 lakhs, it's oral, okay? And when you give 1 lakh, it is intramuscular. Generally, we prefer orally only. We don't give it intramuscularly unless the patient is not able to tolerate oral or has severe vomiting and dry mouth. So, ma'am, how much to give? Sumita, ma'am?
Full marks.
Full marks.
Yeah, answered.
Okay. Next will be
Sandeep.
Sandeep. Sandeep, you are ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. A 63-year-old man On the day 1 post status phacoemulsification surgery presents with the central corneal edema. We do a OCT and we find this picture. What diagnosis?
So it's a Descemet membrane detachment. Management will be balloon air tamponade with a air bubble, or rather better, we can use SF6 or C3F8 to give a better tamponade.
Okay, what concentration of C3F8 will prefer?
C3F8 16%, SF6 12%. Left for 24 to 48 hours.
Why do you reduce their percentage compared to the retina surgery?
Because the pressure needs to be exerted, needs to be less, one, and second, there's a risk of it's an expansile gas, so it can alter the aqueous flow dynamics, and therefore we use a reduced pressure compared to retina surgery.
Perfect.
Because it's a cornea.
Yeah, that's the expansile gas. That is the main cause that we
Yes.
reduce their, we dilute and give it. Perfect.
Yes.
Next, we'll go to Kshitij again. Kshitij, ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So 8-year-old female presents with the sudden deviation of the left eye since 3 days. Diagnosis. I give you a hint over here. The pupil is reacting to light.
Sir, third nerve palsy.
Okay. To complete the diagnosis.
It is pupil sparing.
Second question is 2 causes and 1 important investigation will advise.
Sir, important investigation should be MRI. Causes should be aneurysm and trauma.
But this is pupil sparing, no?
Yeah, pupil sparing, sir. It should resolve mostly. No need of
Clinical investigation. Pupil sparing.
Diabetic and hypertension. 2 causes.
She's a child, na, 8-year-old. Okay. Diagnosis is correct. The causes, I wouldn't put diabetes and all.
Can be aneurysm and trauma, ma'am. The first one I answered.
Okay, this pupil sparing, no? Aneurysm means pupil involving.
Trauma.
Okay, trauma I'll give. Go ahead, Sumit.
Yeah, okay. So, ma'am, he answered half, correct? So, we'll give him half marks. 5.
You can give him 3.
Give him 7.5.
Give him 3, 4 because diagnosis was correct. Of the 2 causes, trauma I'll grant. The diabetes and aneurysm also I grant, but it was pupil sparing.
Okay.
And investigation was correct, but I would have added Dr. MRI with contrast.
Yes.
Okay. And if you're suspecting an aneurysm, then an MRI angio.
So we'll go to Jay now. Jay, you are ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is the question for you. Patient comes with the recent onset of diabetes. That's a history with the no visual complaint. On incidental examination, you find this kind of a finding in the OCT. Can you diagnose this condition?
Sir, grade 2 NPDR, moderate NPDR.
Okay, and mention about Da Vinci trial. Anyone else? Rohan? It's okay if you don't know, you can say pass. So we can just shift to the others and then finish.
Pass.
Okay. Sandeep?
Not sure, sir. Pass.
Kshitij again? Swapnil sir?
Yes. He goes out and comes in again. I think pass from him also.
Yeah, everyone does.
You have to answer now. Swapnish.
No, I'm also passing. Sumit, please answer. You asked something about OCT, then I'll answer. Not trials.
So no marks to be cut, by the way. If Swapnish doesn't know, no marks to be cut.
No, basically the Da Vinci trial is for the diabetic macular edema, treatment with the VEGF trap. And what they concluded in the study is that it's an intravitreal VEGF trap eye. It produces a statistically significant reduction in the macular edema, and it is much more effective compared to the macular laser photocoagulation. That's what the Da Vinci trial was about. That VEGF trap is more effective than the macular photocoagulation. Next is Rohan, correct?
Yeah.
So Rohan, this is for you. See properly I will just give you hints. See both disc and the macula, identify and treatment.
So is this an optic disc pit with a center with a CSR in? Yes, yes, optic disc pit with CSR.
So,
and treatments of so optic disc pits 50% of the times conservatively on observation the CSR resolves, but if that's not the case, then we can go ahead with a laser to the lateral lateral margin of the optic disc from where the CSR is getting sourced, and cut that out by providing like a sub-threshold yellow laser. And if that also doesn't work out, then we can go ahead with pars plana vitrectomy with drainage, with the fluke needle, and yes, sir.
Rohan, you could give a better diagnosis to that than optic disc pit with CSR. So could you reframe your diagnosis?
A serous macular detachment, sir.
Okay, the better answer would be optic disc maculopathy.
Okay, sir.
Okay, because CSR, the etiology is slightly different, and in treatment, okay, I'll grant it to you, but when you say surgical treatment, do not forget to mention C3F8 or any gas.
Yes, sir. At the end of, yes, sir.
Yes, so
absolutely.
Because that is the thing which is going to push the retina back and drain out the SRF. So that is important.
Right, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, so full marks?
Examiners.
Yeah.
Full marks.
So next will be Sandeep again. Sandeep, you are ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See this picture and tell the 3 features of the FFA which you can see in this picture.
Okay. So I can see I can see neovascularization. I can see neovascularization of disc and neovascularization. No, I can see neovascularization elsewhere. I can see microaneurysms, and I can see dot plot hemorrhages. I can also see the foveal avascular zone. I can appreciate. And yeah.
The dot plot hemorrhages is a clinical fundus photo.
Sorry, some microaneurysms.
So you said NVE?
NVE, microaneurysms, foveal avascular zone is slightly increased.
Yeah, okay. Principle?
So it basically works on the principle, it works, the wavelength of the light gets absorbed by the fluorescein dye, and the emergent wavelength is different, passing through a cobalt blue filter. And yeah, so fluorescence is the principle of this basically, where it's a property of a dye to absorb a light of a certain wavelength and emit a light of another wavelength. So it's fluorescence in one word. Like.
And how is it helpful in the vasculopathies?
So it helps in the fact that we inject the dye in the intravenous system, and it goes in the vasculature. And when we take an image before the dye has reached the retina, it is all black. And once the dye has reached there, the light, the dye absorbs the light which we transmit, and it emits a light of another wavelength. And based on that, the vessels are identified. Even the leakage spots and even the low flow structures can be found on FFA, which can't be found on Opta.
Right. So you could mention basic things like what is hypo and what is hyper in your answer somewhere.
Yeah.
So that will...
So hypo is the foveal avascular zone, which is appearing dark, and hyper is the neovascularization elsewhere, which is appearing bright.
And also somewhere, please mention about how the dye is protein bound, not protein bound. So
yeah.
Important.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next. Sumit, ask for the marks.
Yeah, Sumita ma'am, marks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we'll go back to Kshitij. Kshitij, you are ready?
Yes, sir.
This is for you. See this histopathological slide, characteristically marked by arrows. Identify the 2 slides. What are we trying to point out in this slide?
Sir, this is rosette seen in the Homer-right rosette or a flexor Winsteiner rosette.
Okay, flexor
Winsteiner. And seen in retinoblastoma.
Do you know any other condition where do we see it? It's not ophthalmic, but still I can give you marks. Medulloblastoma, medulloepithelioma, both will show this.
Yeah. Okay.
Ma'am, marks he answered full.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And next, Jay again. Jay, you are ready?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So identify this kind of a magnifying glass here. Okay, try and attempt the second question.
Sir, this is probably a handheld magnifier.
Okay. Try and answer the second question.
Castenbaum rule is the vessels, if they're on the disc, it is 6 to 12. They are normal. And so if it is less, so it is going to atrophy.
Sorry, anyone else? Jay, Rohan?
So the Kestenbaum index, as he said, if it's less than 6, then it's optic atrophy. If it's going beyond 13, 12 to 13, then it's hyperemic. And in between, it's
okay, wait.
That is the Kestenbaum's sign for the number of blood vessels on the optic disc.
Yeah.
This is a different Kestenbaum's rule.
Sir, in case of magnification, it uses the distance visual acuity to estimate the magnification which will be required for near vision. That's what it says. It basically estimates the magnification required for near vision based on the distant visual acuity. With the reduced Snellens.
So
It's basically of role in patients with low vision because we need to calculate and estimate how much magnification will they require as a part of low vision aids.
I will answer this. This is called the handheld magnifier is the correct answer, but specifically it is called as a pre-dome magnifier. And Kestenbaum rule, as he correctly said, is basically it's a reciprocal of the best corrected distance visual acuity. So if your visual acuity is 20 by 400, then you just reciprocate, and what you get is 20 diopters. So that is the magnification required for the near vision in such cases. That is what the Kestenbaum rule states.
Excellent, Sandeep. Very good.
Thank you.
So how many marks, ma'am, for this?
Full marks.
Ma'am, the question was asked to Kshitij and he did not answer.
Doesn't matter. Somebody answered. Full.
No.
It was difficult, so give it.
Okay. Right. Swapnesh sir, we end up the 10 questions here.
Okay, great. So what is the OSCE score? You are going to tell now or later on?
Yeah, I will tell you. I need to just calculate.
So thank you, Hima madam, for joining us as
Thanks.
an external. And
Thank
Sumita
you.
madam, always a pleasure to have you.
I hope, Hema, you had a nice time.
I had a nice time, ma'am. Good experience, good memories. Took me back to my PG days.
I know, it was nice seeing you also. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Especially Swapnesh and Sumit. You all are doing a phenomenal job. And I'm sure the morale of my students has definitely increased and they'll do well in the final exams.
Arey, madam, congratulations to you. Your students are so well trained. I'm going to send my son to you only.
He's most welcome, but I'm sure he will have in-house training better than me. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Bye.
So thank you, Sumita ma'am. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Sumita, I'll give you the marks on
Yes,
WhatsApp.
yes, ma'am.
Huh?
And the OSCE score is 87.5 today. Well done, Sandeep, Jay, Rohan, and Kshitij.
Thank you, sir.
Ma'am, with your permission, can we end the meeting?
Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah,
all of you once again. Thanks, Sumita, for being there.
And thank you, Harsha ma'am. Thank you for all the OSCEs and help.
And these 4 students, I'm really proud of you. These teachers will remain behind you more than your parents. They are going to be more nervous than your parents when you're going to give the exam. So make them proud.
Swapnesh has first-hand experience.
Yes. Thank you.
So
Bye.
God bless all of you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.